The following is intended only for mature audiences. Always consult legal and medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised. Folks, this evening we've got a lot of people that are starting to catch us up in the chat room here on Facebook. Thank you so much for kind of bearing with me while I worked out my technical malfunction to get our show running this evening. As you're looking at the title bar down on the bottom, this evening's show truly is about spiritual walk-ins. Now, I'm going to take just a second and talk about it, and then we're going to kind of go around because everybody has a different interpretation of what a spiritual walk-in is. The best way that I could phrase this is that we all have... See, and here goes those wonderful technical things all over again. I changed screens and somebody's missing. We all have the capability when we are born to be in a soul contract, okay? And it is important that people kind of think about that. Before we come here, we make a contract to say, here are the basic things that I would like to understand. Here are the basic experiences I would like to have. Here are the emotions that I would like somewhere along the line to be able to experience. So when we get here, our life is mapped out. It does not say exactly how those will happen. It just states that these things will be present somewhere between point A and end of life. There are times that our soul becomes too tired. It has experienced something too much, too painful. It has gone, this is more than I can handle. So what happens at that point, our soul wants to step out. And yet this contract, just like any contract that we have on earth, this contract is not fulfilled. Which means that we're going to have to turn around and do it again. That's karma. We have things that we have to learn. Means we'd have to rewrite the entire contract and live it again in another life instead of being able to progress. So this very unique situation happens. We find, or for lack of better words, heaven finds another soul extremely similar to ours that is looking for much the same thing, much the same kind of experiences. And it says, okay, Michael's having a hard time. Why don't you go ahead and bring him home? I'll step into his shoes and fulfill this lifetime for him. Because there are so many intangibles that are around us. We interact with so many people. We have an impact on the world that we at times don't even know, recognize, realize, or otherwise. So our life coming up short and going, oh, Michael's having a bad day, we'll go ahead and pull him home, his body can die, is going to screw the world up pretty bad. Whether we would like to think so or not, it's going to impact so many people till they bring another soul in. Does that make sense to everybody so far? Or am I so far out in left field that it doesn't make any sense whatsoever? Jared?
No, I get it. I understand what you're talking about.
And I think you're right on.
Mm-hmm.
Jared, I'm going to ask, while I continue to make sure that I have the rest of this stuff ironed out, What are some of the things that you can think of that might cause this, or when would somebody on Earth see this happen?
Usually what happens is when the new soul, in essence, inhabits the physical body of the person whose soul exited, if you will. Usually what happens is the soul that's inhabited that body really doesn't have a remembrance or a memory of, right away anyway, we'll say, fulfilling or coming into that new body. So it's usually the people around that person that start to identify the changes within them. So if we talk about like intense personal problems, usually sometimes traumatic events, accidents, it could be an operation. Um, if you're undergoing an operation, during those periods of time is usually when the soul transfers. You can call it a soul transfer or a soul exchange, if you will, as well. Um, During those periods of times, that's when the soul changes place, and usually the people around them start to identify the changes, and it can be subtle changes because there may be similarities within the new spirit that comes in, but 9 times out of 10 you're going to notice the differences. People may lose interest in activities they once did, hobbies. If they enjoyed fishing, now they don't enjoy fishing at all. Now they're a sports enthusiast, and they never were sports oriented whatsoever in their past. You can start to notice things like that: change in mood, change in the way they interact and exchange their energy with you, if you will, if that makes sense. Um, there's a lot of reasons. Anybody else can think of some other reasons or some identifying factors when the soul steps in? Help me.
They can be very depressed for a long period of time and don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. Um, and there's a lady named Ruth Montgomery that wrote a book in 1979 called Strangers Among Us. And the whole book is devoted to walk-ins. From what I've read and what I've a little bit seen, it can happen to somebody in their 30s. Oftentimes it's 40 plus. But they just can't do it anymore. And they may not even be aware that this is what they're doing. They think they're just whatever, and then that soul decides that I'm done, I've had it, I want out of here. So rather than kill that physical body and, like Michael said, interrupt a whole bunch of lives, they will just leave that physical body. And usually the soul that comes in is an older soul, more experienced soul. So
I have seen or heard, I think we have all witnessed at some point in time, often after a major surgery, like a very massive heart surgery or a very massive kind of lengthy surgery, that people will wake up. They after they get, a couple of days go by when all of the knock me out meds are gone, and they return to what is classically seen as normal. That it's not the same person that went to sleep, and people stop and they're like, "Oh, well, doctors will tell you it is the shock of the body being on a ventilator for an extreme period of time, or the shock of a body being on a bypass machine, or whatever, that it changes some of the physiology in the brain, and due to these changes, this happens." Folks, this is not like split personalities. This is, as Jared and Pat have said, these are distinct differences. You don't go from having a love of white chocolate one day to going, "Oh my God, that stuff is disgusting." And that's what people see.
Yeah.
The little things, and especially for older people that have grandchildren. They used to love and snuggle and hug, and now all of a sudden this elderly person might go, "You need to sit down." And the grandchild doesn't understand it. They just go, "Okay, Papa's not the same anymore." You know?
Yeah. I think it's important to note, too, that when the soul comes into the body, because we are spiritual beings living a physical life, we have this physical matter, we have this physical makeup, the brain and all its neural connections and memories and everything that's stored within our brains is maintained within that physical body when the soul steps in. So the soul will be familiar with its surroundings, the people that are around them, but it's their own personal likes, dislikes, inherent traits, the way they walk, the way they talk, everything is notably different within that person.
And it's extremely true, and at times it's difficult. Heather, I'm waiting to see what you're going to be saying on all of this, because something early on told me that you have experienced this firsthand in your life.
Well, I mean, I hear you guys talking a lot about, well, first of all, I don't know who said it first, but there's lots of different, like definitions. People define it in different ways. I mean, is it all one and the same? Kind of. But I think that it doesn't always have to be, the tiredness or the traumatizing events and stuff. I think that some of us potentially, I think, Michael, you mentioned soul contracts.
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe, we reach a certain point in our life and maybe we were contracted to, hey, now in this point of your life to get to where you need to be and experience what you need, it's time for, some an older soul, somebody more spiritually evolved, or whatever, to kind of continue on in that path. Also, I have to think for me, I mean, this week I had a healing session, and I was wrapping up some healing work that I started in January. And on Monday, I had this healing session. It was very powerful, but gentle. And I have absolutely felt like a different person. And I feel that conclusion, and I believe one of her comments is the old you is dead. The old you is gone, and by some terms, you could call that what we're talking about. You know what I mean? It is the death of the old me and the rebirth. And it's for the purpose of ascension, for spiritual, if we can experience things like that a lot more often in life than we think. And I think also these things happen, the more intense experiences like what you guys are describing, where you're just completely, I experienced that in my life, and it just very, very different. I just had a moment and I awakened and I just literally felt like a completely different person. I don't know if it's exactly the same thing you guys are talking about, but absolutely a different person. I still love chocolate, I will say that. But I think there's a lot of different ways to define it, like you guys were saying, and it's very interesting. I do think that this occurs a lot more than we are aware.
And I would agree, there's a lot of information. There's something that I did not remember, and thank God that Shelley did. At the last portion of our show, we've begun kind of doing a spiritual guidance side, where people in the chat room can ask our panel members one question, and we try to give you more of a spiritual insight. So if you would, as Shelley had mentioned, please put an X1, the number or the letter X and the number 1 next to your name in the chat room, and then we'll have a random selection of the person who's going to be our person of the night, so to speak. Jared, I'm going to come back to you for a minute because I have a question. In looking or dealing at walk-ins, have you ever dealt with that in a personal side in your life? As in someone that you know really fits this definition?
Honestly, I think it's a rarity. It's not something that happens that often, if you will, because we are talking about in a lot of cases, and the most of the times that we identify this are usually in those extreme moments or those extreme times of a person's life. So, no, I can't honestly say that I can think of somebody specifically this has happened to. Oftentimes, I wish it would happen to me in some cases. Someone with a better memory can just step in and, take over anytime they want. Or, you get in those rough times where you know, you've had enough and you feel like you've had enough, which brings up an interesting topic. I just wanted to add this in there because I really can't relate to the question because I really don't know anyone specific or a specific instance when I've seen it occur in somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. But there is also an idea out there that the word light worker is used a lot loosely within our community in the metaphysical world. And if we're going to return, let's term a spirit a light worker. And as this light worker enters this body, a lot of times when the light worker enters in the body, it's not that they're trying to fulfill the contract of the person that was already on the planet going through the motions. They just needed a body to inhabit so they could then therefore go through their motions and fulfill their contract at this point. So in some cases, one soul is completing one contract, leaving the body. In essence, we're using this vessel, to continue for somebody else to go on with. Because some light workers don't want to experience childhood, don't want to go through puberty, don't want to go through adolescence into adulthood. They want to get here and now, handle their issues and problems, and go forward, get it over with. They don't want to have to go through the mundane of all the stuff leading up to it. Now, some souls need that process, but not all souls that are on the other side need to enter a body. They need to maybe fulfill one portion of their contract. So I'm going to borrow your body to do that because you're at the age I needed to do this at.
That's an interesting kind of thing. But to me, that's got to be like anybody that is around a person like that has got to be going, what's wrong with you? Yeah, exactly. Who the hell are you, and what did you do with my brother?
I've heard that a lot of times. What alien abducted you? Who is this person? I don't know you.
Yes. Pat, have you ever experienced this in your life?
I thought I was when I had my second near death. I really thought that I had, because my personality changed. So up until then, I was always, how can I help? What can I do for you? I put myself last in everything. And after that second near death, I told my husband, I'm first, the kids are next. I don't care what happens to the rest of you. Devil take the hindmost. And I totally changed. And I'm still not sure if that's what happened or not. But I think for me, it was just learning my own self-importance. But when I read Ruth Montgomery's book, it made a lot of sense with some people that I knew. And at the time, I wasn't really sure how to deal with it or what it was. But it's interesting. I met a lady at Lilydale who later wrote a book, and she remembered laying down on the couch to take a nap. And she just hadn't been well. They couldn't give her a clue as to what was going on with her, but she just hadn't been well for a long time. She was struggling with her family and her work and everything. And she said, I went to sleep, and I swear to you, when I woke up, I was an entirely different person. And like you said, her likes, her dislikes had changed, because I'm like Jared, I believe that the brain remembers the big things, but it forgets the little mundane. And
I don't remember growing up.
Yeah. So she wrote about her experience, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, that she could do that. Of course, people thought she was crazy, and she said, I think I am, but that's beside the point,
It is one topic that I know does not get a lot of circulation, because I know that even readers, if we all went to a fair as a reader, this is not a topic that we would circulate very often. I don't think that, in truth, I've really heard it, but maybe at one other psychic fair at all. So this is not one of those topics that is there. And as Jared said, this is one of those things that does not occur frequently. There's no way to measure it. There's no way to... And it has been only noticed more recently, within a few hundred years, than really widespread. I think only really the people that were paying attention beforehand were the hardcore metaphysical people, the shaman, things like this. They understood what was going on,
Right. Yep.
And I don't want the viewers to get confused too, because this has nothing to do with possession. Possession is a completely different thing. So don't think of it as possession. We're talking about high evolved spiritually, spiritual level of, light worker entering a body, that type of a thing. It's not anything lower dealing with lower entities, energies stepping in, taking over, possessing the person at all.
No, if anything, it's a higher enlightenment, a higher understanding of the spirituality part and what your true purpose is, and fulfilling some part of you that, maybe wasn't important before. And now to this walk-in, to the soul who comes in, this is something very, very important to them.
And that's something, I'm glad you brought that up, Jared, because that is wholeheartedly something that I don't want people to think of. So lay in bed going, oh my God, am I going to get possessed? No. And the chances of you experiencing a spiritual walk-in is slim.
Mm-hmm.
You would
just
probably...
like possessions, it's slim.
Yes. Yeah, you're more than likely better capable of winning the lottery than either of the other things. Serious. All right, we are going to take a show break for just a few minutes, and then when we come back, we'll wrap up, because now I'm going to try and get us back on track where we should be. So everybody, if you would, bear with us. We'll be back in just a few moments. Divine Awakening's New Age Emporium and Healing Arts Shop. It's the largest locally owned and operated metaphysical retailer in the Sandusky, Ohio Tri-County area. Serving the Firelands region since April of 2014, they're pleased to offer a space that is welcoming, relaxing, and open to everyone. In the Emporium, you will find a variety of unique gifts, special events and services, as well as classes and workshops to soothe your mind, body, and spirit. If you're in the Sandusky, Ohio area, look for Divine Awakenings at 1006 Tiffin Avenue, Sandusky, Ohio. Their phone number is 419-502-9137, and you can find them on Facebook at /Divine Awakenings LLC. We have the oddest conversations during our show break that I'm just going to sit and say nothing. But we I don't know if the people in the chat, we get accused of, well, you're all working together. Well, no, we are all so separate. We are separated by at least 50 miles. Heather is up in Michigan, so that's a couple hundred miles. Jared's up in the Sandusky area. Pat is over almost in the...
Akron.
Yeah, by the Akron area. I'm all the way over close to Sharon, PA in Ohio. But when we all get together, it's like recurring family night. So we all catch up, and especially during the break. Once again, for the people, if you want to be or take part of or be our person for the spiritual guidance question this evening, please put X1 next to your name in the chat room, and I know that we will get to everybody. We will be able to pick one person this evening. Let me kind of get back on a focus of spiritual walk-ins in the body. Jared, you brought up an awful lot of extremely valid points. And it makes me wonder, I don't know, if people were to stop and try to see this, has it happened to someone around them, what might be some easy criteria that they might be able to say, and please understand, everybody in the chat room, everybody on podcast, I'm not sitting here going, here's a checklist, by God, if they match all of this, this is not WebMD, we are not self-diagnosing. I am trying to show, everybody does it, come on. But what are some of the things that somebody could say, this kind of looks like this, maybe I need to go find an expert to talk to them?
Some of the things we've kind of hit on, but it's kind of like, look at the path of where the person's at. Has the person had any traumatic personal things going on in their life? You know, are they going through, let's say, a bankruptcy or a divorce or, you know, a separation from family, or, you know, what extreme things have been going on in this person's life? Have they gotten into a car accident? Have they had a near death? Have they had an operation? Like I said, like we were talking before, there's lots of ways when the soul can actually transfer through, and a lot of times it's done in a sleep process when the soul exchange occurs. However, look at where they've been, what kind of events might have led up to when you've started to notice a change in them. Is it changes in the likes and dislikes, like we were talking about? You know, once they like chocolate and candy, now they can't stand the sight of the stuff. You know, maybe they've adapted to a organic lifestyle. Maybe, and they weren't before. Maybe they were, you know, meat eaters, but now they're vegan. You know, maybe they were a nice, level-headed person, and now they're, you know, grumpier more, or, you know, just the opposite. Maybe they were grumpy and now they're really happy, you know, go lucky type people. It's those changes. Notice and look at the different changes and say, you were once this way and now you're this way, and the complete differences. And usually it's a chain of different things. It's not just one thing, like, oh, I used to like chocolate and now it's been 7 years, so my digestive process has changed and I don't like it no more. I can't eat it. Mm-hmm. You know, that's different. It's these dramatic changes in life events, if you will, physical traits in some cases, personality changes, all those type of things. And you're gonna go across the board and go check, yep. Just like when the depression commercial comes on TV. Oh God, I got depression. I check. Those type of things are the symptoms for stuff. Yeah. In some cases, it is a checklist, like you were saying. You know, it's not really a complete. You can't group it in one big box here and say this is exactly what it is. But look for the differences from where they were into where they are now, and what could have sparked those changes. When did that take place?
So as a naturopath student, you're saying all this, and I'm just like picking out like mineral deficiency. It's like, oh, well, they're probably deficient in this and this and this. Anyways, not to be off topic or anything.
Pat, I'm going to ask you, how might someone... And again, because you have a wealth of experience, how might someone best deal with a spiritual walk-in? Meaning that person.
Be understanding. Don't judge them. What I found in talking with that lady and some other people, her focus changed. She was never religious, you would call it. But she said, all of a sudden I became interested in all kinds of religion. I grew up a Baptist, and now all of a sudden I want to know about Catholics and Protestants and all these Buddha and the Dalai Lama. And she said, I'm driving my family nuts because I never, ever, I would go to church on Sunday and sit there like the nice lady that I was supposed to be. And she said that was the biggest thing she noticed about herself. Plus, little childhood preteen memories. Her friends would be talking and they'd say, well, don't you remember when and it was something that not everybody had general knowledge about, but it was something that was important to them. You know what I mean? Like they got drunk and went naked swimming or something, and nobody, because that was just something they wouldn't do. And she said, that bothered me, because she said, I had big memories. I had big things and I knew all the things that I should know, but she said there was always these little subtleties that would come up maybe once a month or once every 3 or 4 months, especially if she lived in the same town she'd always lived in, went to high school with everybody, and she did not have some of the memories they had. But I would say don't judge them. They're just going through a not a difficult time, but an adjustment time, if you will. And they're questioning themselves, like, what is wrong with me? It's just like, we change as we age, we change anyway.
Yeah,
Spirit brought up a good point. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One thing I would like to add to what Pat was saying, it's like, it's someone who has Alzheimer's, for instance. You can mourn the person that they were, but you celebrate the person they are now, and you enjoy the person that they are now. It's basically just have to go on with life. And yeah, I noticed these changes in you, but adapt to the new person and accept them for who they are and what they're going through, or what changes are occurring.
Yeah.
And that's got to be difficult for some people. Imagine, if you would, married couple, been married 30 years. One or the other has something happen to where now they are not the person who everybody remembers.
Mm-hmm.
I can't fathom how it would feel to deal with that, either as a spouse or as a child of those, or a sibling. It's like, and Jared said it very, very much, who the hell are you?
Mm-hmm.
So, Pat, exactly what you're saying is true. Heather, completely in topic, and yet I'm so curious, because here again, you grew up with somewhat of a theological background. I'm not going to say that you divorced it, but you definitely walked away from it, and the path that you're walking on now is nowhere near what you had done previous. How would you deal with, let's say that you were married 20 years, and all of a sudden your spouse was no longer who they used to be, and you recognized it for who you were. How would you deal with that?
Well, I'd say one of my strong suits is holding space for people and just allowing them to, having that compassion that people need. So as difficult as that would be in such a close environment, such an intimate space, I would like to think that just, again, giving them that space for expansion and for transformation. And I know that I've experienced those things in my life, so I feel like I'm a good candidate to, kind of provide that space for them to kind of be open and talk about it, just be able to listen. You know what I mean? I think that communication is really important in any relationship. And if you feel that you don't feel like the same person anymore, or all the things that you used to love, you don't, and it's, not depression, it's a totally different kind of transformation that you're going through. I'm
going to steer this in a different.
Nope, you're good.
I'm going to steer this in a very different way right now. How would you deal with this if it happened to your oldest child?
I mean, much the similar way. I would keep the lines of communication open, and just whatever they need from me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in a respectful kind of way, and just to hold that space. I think really that's one of the most important things that we can do for anybody going through any kind of transition. This is something that's a bit to the extreme, but in any kind of transition, any kind of transformation, when we can hold that space and give them that compassion and that grace, and let our own guards down so that we can be vulnerable as well, so that they can feel safe to also be vulnerable and to communicate and just feel very open to share.
And that's about as best as any of us can do. Just real quick, out of the chat room is just one question that I know would be on a lot of minds. Michelle Sackley had said, can a traumatic event trigger this? And I think probably all of us would sit here and go, sure it would, without a doubt. It's one of the biggest triggers, dependent upon the event in and of itself.
Yeah.
Michael,
Yes.
could you explain holding space? I mean, we all know what it is, but for some people, I have a feeling that's a term they're not used to.
Oh, I'll let you do that.
Well, to me, holding space is just being aware of what's going on, trying to keep the white light around everyone, trying not to go off the deep end. Don't get real upset. Just kind of try to keep everything on an even keel. Because, some people get really upset if we change a little bit. And if we change a lot, that makes it even more traumatic for them. Would you say that's true, Heather? When we hold space, we're just trying to keep things level in the light and not going off the deep end, not
Right.
overreacting.
Right, a sacred. My favorite Hawaii term for it was, they called it a sacred container. I like that. They all talked about it like it was like a normal thing, and I'm like, sacred container. Like, I always say a sacred space, but there's something very intimate and special about saying that.
And
it's a sacred container.
Right, and it's like accepting them for who they are and what they are right now, not trying to understand what's going on. So,
I had a
Fantastic.
question.
Right.
Yes.
Don't try to analyze everything. Just let it come out.
Real quick, I wanted to ask Heather, because I know Heather's. You'll have to forgive me because I don't know what are you studying naturopathic medicine, or you're going into naturopath type stuff?
Yes, I'm in school. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. My question is, have you heard or seen any case studies done or heard of any instances when people have had like chemical or physiological changes suddenly within their body? Would you believe that, if we have the soul transference, that it can affect the physical body? What is your thought on that?
I absolutely think that it would affect the physical body. I mean, because everything is energy, right? So you're exchanging that energy. So your DNA in every cell in your body is going to have to go through that adjustment period. So, I mean, in my mind, yeah, absolutely. I mean, our own thoughts can change the cell structure in our body. So absolutely, yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Good question, Jared. That one never even crossed my mind, but wholeheartedly true. All right, folks, we are going to shift gears to the last portion of our show, to where we are going to have our spiritual guidance. And one of these days I'll actually remember to say our spiritual guidance at that point. We'll have the music not so damn loud. There are so many.
We're keeping it real here, guys.
I'll tell you what, it is the one thing. There are so many moving parts on this end to be able to get it to what people see on Facebook or YouTube, that typically I take it for granted that I'm like, oh, I'll just breeze right through this. And tonight, I'm all thumbs, It must have been a Samson thing. This evening, I hear a phone.
Fine. I'm trying to mute me and I can't.
Mute. That's all right. This evening, our person that is going to be able to have the one free question is none other than Kathy Green. Unmute yourself, Pat. We can listen to your phone. It's fine. So, Kathy.
Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Kathy.
Kathy, if you would, I know that there's a delay of about anywhere between 10 and 20 seconds between what we, the four of us, see in the one shot versus what the world sees. So it'll take her just a second to catch up. But Kathy, when you do, go ahead and let us know what your question is for this evening. I'm curious of one other thing while I'm waiting on that. Pat, do you think that it is possible that people, a new spirit that walks into, would they be more inclined or less inclined to have any kind of a substance abuse issue?
I think they would be less inclined.
That's what I'm thinking as well.
They're an old soul. They've been through that kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's what, if people see somebody that suddenly goes from being a very serious abuser to whack, they're clean overnight, you probably experienced our topic of conversation this evening. Kathy Green, we're still waiting on you, dear.
I wonder if her net went out. She was having issues.
Was she?
Yeah, today. She was so upset. My internet screwed up.
Is that what she's saying right now?
Well,
See, everybody, Kathy Green happens to be Reverend Pat Beers' technical advisor because Reverend Pat Beers is technically challenged. It's a nice way to put it.
Let's put it nicely. Challenged.
A good way to think of this, too, is like when you move out of one house into another, there was somebody that inhabited the house before you moved in, unless it's a brand new construction. But if you move into a house that's maybe 100 years old, the old inhabitants moved out, and you're now taking residence in that house. So you can think of it that way, too, if that helps.
Oh, now that's an interesting kind of analogy.
It is, because all the energy in the house, that's good. I like that. I like that a lot. I have to wonder, I think about it as like, there's all these different dimensions and there's all these other parallel things happening at the same time in different, like, could you be your own stand-in? You're like, well, I'm in this dimension doing this and I'm right here doing this. Do I come back or,
Yeah.
You know what I'm getting?
Yeah.
I believe that. You swap souls with like a nullity? Because like it makes sense in my head.
I don't think it's unheard of for someone, say, in their 20s to step out. A traumatic event happens. Somebody steps in to that is either maybe that light worker that's dealt with something like this to help you get through that period of time, and then boom, they're out and you're back in. I don't think that's unheard of something like that to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Possibilities are endless. And
kind of like the original soul going to the hospital for healing.
I'm so glad you said that.
I'm going to put you on speaker, Michael.
Here we go.
Her internet's down, so I'm going to put her on speaker on my phone, and she's going to ask you the question, okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right, go.
Like the original soul. I know.
Kathy.
Michael, I'm sorry, my internet is going terrible.
Well, tell Michael your question so he can...
Okay, my question is, I was thinking about people. Can they walk in, do they walk in to serve a purpose for you or a person? Do they come in like with a mission? Why is he laughing?
Oh, we're not laughing.
Because the delay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the
delay.
We were laughing, Kathy, because everything was going kind of sideways on your end and two people on the phone, and Pat had to sit and go, Kathy, focus, sweetheart. Ask your question. That's why we're laughing.
Do you have a delay. I have to keep going in and out to try to even get you.
That is Facebook's issue, to where a lot of live streaming shows have become problematic, that they freeze an awful lot. And we're going to take care of that come next week. Next week, we will not have any of that issue at all.
Okay, repeat your question again for me.
Michael's awesome.
Okay, my question is, can a walk-in come in with a mission for someone? For example, can a walk-in come in to be a helpmate for someone?
They're shaking their heads yes.
Yeah, you were just saying that too, and I believe that.
Okay,
We
wait,
were on the
I'm
same
going to try.
wavelength as Kathy before she
Listen
said
to the
Yeah.
phone. Forget the computer.
Yeah, go say it how you said it, Jared, the light worker.
I feel that a soul or a light worker who has experienced a trauma that you might be going through in your life can step in, deal with that trauma, inhabit your body, and then after the trauma is over with, whether it be a day or two or an extended period of time, when that portion is over with, that trauma, you then, in essence, they step back out, you step back in and take back over. I believe that's a possibility that can happen.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
yeah,
hold on,
thank you.
Kathy.
Almost like they would take your space or take your place.
Right.
Right.
To help you
Take
through
on the
process.
burden for you because they've experienced something similar that can
Right.
help you transition through that period of time until you, as the soul you are, can step back in and take it from there on out after the issue's been dealt with.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
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 Yeah, thank you.
Bye bye.
Does everybody
But
else believe
even
that?
when, like,
Heather, go ahead. Yeah, Jared, I agree. See, I see you over here. I see you over here. I'm going to point you. Put your hands on the desk, Michael. Okay. Hi. Heather,
Repeat.
tell me.
Repeat, Jared, please.
so, like what you were, what did you just say?
I know we're cutting out.
So
I just-
what Jared was saying earlier, I don't think my internet's good too either. No, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. So Jared was speaking about how, we were talking about soul contracts and soul purposes and stuff. So if you really did have this soul exchange, then, you're still working towards a purpose and maybe a different soul contracts or different life path, however you want to say it, than the soul prior. But at the same time, I have to wonder, I guess there's so many possibilities. It's so intriguing to me because it's like my mind wants to go down each different rabbit hole to dig up more possibilities, I guess.
So in essence, what we're saying is just because it's a walk-in doesn't mean it's a permanent situation. They can come just to help for a short period of time till you're back on your feet, shall we say, and then they will leave again and you're back to possibly what and who you were before.
Mm-hmm.
And I would
Yeah.
agree. Very much the same. To my understanding, to things that I have been able to perceive or watch happen, the original hosting soul has to accomplish A, B, C, D. That's what their contract was. The incoming soul may only have to accomplish some of C and D, and then they have their own agenda after that. So they will overlap in what they're doing. But then a continuance and a divergence. Sometimes that divergence happens quickly, which leaves the rest of every human being on the planet going, I thought I knew you. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to wrap their finger or their mind around that concept because, like I was trying to introduce before about the house concept and in the house being a structure, your body, in essence, if we got to break this down, you are not your body. If that makes sense. You are a spiritual being that is inhabiting a body because once the physical body ceases, your spirit, in essence, lives on. Okay? Think of it like the house. The house is just a vessel. It's just a container where you can step in, do your work, and step out. So you have to think of it along those lines.
It's a meat suit. If we're supernatural, it's a meat suit.
Yep. I like that.
It's one of those things. It can be a difficult subject. It was one of the reasons, I was glad that we were going to tackle it, because again, you don't hear about this. People witness it in their lives. They might experience it in a loved one or a relative or a friend of theirs, and they're left going, I don't understand. I don't get it. So I'm glad we were able to cover that this evening.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of people saying that Facebook is just having an absolute cow with our live stream. ISPs all over are having a difficult time. And yet Facebook itself, next week we will have that ironed out, because we will be broadcasting live from our YouTube channel and linking back to Facebook. So next week our show should be predominantly error-free.
Yay!
Pat, I was trying to be so polite. She's laughing.
We live in hope.
Yeah, she knows better. Everybody, thanks for joining this evening in the chat room. Pat, Heather, Jared, thank you for putting up with me this evening and the technical glitch side.
I don't envy you.
You do a great job.
Right.
And I'm just so thankful. Like, you will never hear me complain about any of it, because I don't know how to do any of it. We think you're awesome.
I complain.
And all you hear from me is laughter, because I have no clue what's happening.
Oh, Pat.
That's like, my job is to sit here and look pretty and be wise, right?
Right.
Pat,
It's a good thing Michael loves us,
Shelley hit me with a good one, and I'm going to tell you while we're here. They're coming out evidently with a new, iPad pad kind of thing. And it's called, I shit you not, Grand Pad. It is rubberized on the outside. I think it only has or does one or two functions, like big buttons in the middle, can't miss it kind of thing. And I said, honey, look at that. Look what they're coming out with for older people. And Shelley didn't miss a heartbeat. She goes, honey, you'll need one here pretty soon.
I love you, Shelley. Love you.
I don't do humor in our house anymore. For everybody that's watching on the Terra Turas, in the chat room that will be listening to us live on the podcast side later on, thank you so much for joining. We will be back again next week with another episode of Terra Turas. Until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend and some calm and some relaxing and some non-storms. Until next week, we'll catch up with everybody again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.